I want to thank everyone for coming. This is all about what makes a great commercial real estate agent great. So, in this very strange time, we've had a lot of people reaching out to us about, the career and what it means. People are starting to have a second look at what they're doing. And I think what we wanted to do here was give everybody sort of an idea of what it is to be a real estate agent and in terms of a career. And if you're a client looking in on this, then you'll see, what kind of makes us tick. And I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So we're going to go into this and we'll talk about a bit who we are. Oh, there we go. Not going to do it. So I'm Aaron Graben. So I'm the broker of record here, and I've been doing this for about 21 years, which is crazy. And my partner in crime is Anthony Clifford, and he's the vice president, and we've been together for 12 years. So and it's been a great, fast, long 12 years for the two of us. We've really grown the company together, and I value Anthony in all things. I do what he tells me to do. So Anthony, it's good to see you.
Good to have you. It's I'm looking so clean shaven in that photo. I don't know what happened, Corona.
Yeah, I got coronavirus at that team. Okay, so I think what we wanted first do is if anyone is looking at commercial real estate, what is it exactly that Titan York does? Because there's so many different facets and silos for commercial real estate, and I think it's important that we identify exactly who we are. And I know that sounds like a very simple way of doing it, but effectively, landlords own properties, own buildings. Tenants lease from the landlords. Commercial tenants lease from those landlords. Titan York represents those commercial tenants in the renewal and relocation of their corporate commercial spaces. So we only represent the tenant. And that's significant in that we avoid a conflict of interest, and we really are focused on one side of the equation on any corporate lease. So in going from there, I think what and Anthony will talk about this, is that this isn't just a sales job. And there's a huge amount of information. You kind of got to know a lot about a lot. Like Anthony, in terms from your perspective, what are the things you think you got to know to do this job?
Well, I mean, I think, we're talking about fundamentally a sales job, and that's probably an inaccurate description. We're not offering a product for sale. Rather, we're representing clients with these transactions. So there's so many different hats that we have to wear, and fundamentally, sales is on one side, and the other side is your working knowledge of the industry and understanding the flow of a deal, building relationships with people within the industry, helping with space planning and construction and overseeing all these projects. It really encompasses the role in its entirety, and it is very different than just a sales job. I mean, my title. One of my titles is sales representative, and that is a legal requirement, of course, for our industry, but it doesn't truly represent what it is that we do. And it really is, we are consultants at the end of the day, and we're helping clients build these strategies, and we're not just selling a product one time. We're trying to build something for 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
Yeah, it's funny. I think about all the different hats I have to wear in order to do this job. So the first one is, there's sales. I have to pick up the phone, and I have to make sure that we get clients, and you can't do your job without them. And that's for sure part of it. And you have to be able to present. I think presentation is really important, to get in front of a prospective client and show what you can do in a meeting and get them to buy off on and engage you. But beyond that, you become this sort of, you become an advisor. You're right in there at the C level of every organization, helping to define strategy. And then you have to sort of take that advisory role and go to the marketplace and be that agent and know exactly where to go to find that space for them. And then you got to tour them, and then you've got to figure out the financial model for it, and then you've got to understand the design, and then so you got to have a designer's hat on and work with a designer, and then you have to understand the construction, and you got to work with a contractor to budget, and then you got to be able to negotiate. So you're going to be that strong negotiator, creating leverage for your client, benchmark against the market, and then then you have to build it out, and then you have to be the lawyer in a sense, and get in there and help them get that lease done and work with their lawyer in order to get the lease finalized, and then again move them in. So it's an ongoing service. So I find that to just say, oh, it's a sales job is really not giving any credit to the trade craft, and that there's just a huge amount that you have to know.
Yeah, I think, the way that I would love to position it and try my best to position it towards whether it be clients or prospective agents that are looking to get into the industry is that, what we try to do is align ourselves as a company's in-house real estate department. And that sort of encompasses all the details that you just mentioned. It's not just sales. We're really trying to be a part of that organization, understand it from the inside out, and then run with all things real estate related. You listed out quite a few of them there, but the in-house real estate department without paying a salary sounds pretty good, and that's certainly our intention when we represent clients.
Okay, so how did you get into real estate? How did you get? Oh, sounds like Anthony's sound has gone off there.
There we go. Got it back. Sorry about that. So how did I get into real estate? I mean, I think probably a lot like many of the agents. I mean, I don't think there's many 8 or 9-year-old kids saying, I can't wait to be a commercial real estate agent when I grow up. For me, it was really an opportunity that just presented itself at the right time. I was coming out of school and throughout university was working at an architectural design firm, and took a bit of a liking and understanding to that component, and as well as studying urban planning in school. So my intention was to come out and get my real estate license to start flipping houses. And so left school, went back to the architectural design firm until I could get things aligned. And one day I had a friend call me. He was 3 months into his role at Titan York and said, hey, I think this might be an opportunity you might want to look at. I came in for an interview, and here I am doing a webinar with you 12 years later. So it was an opportunity that presented itself to me at the right time. And for me, I just sort of jumped in 2 feet with both feet, and I've kept rolling since. So it really was a bit of a random opportunity. I didn't consider it ahead of time, but haven't looked back since. How about yourself? I mean, I know a bit of your story, but.
Yeah, for me, it was I was, in my late 20s. I'd finished I had 2 degrees, one economics, one in a BCom, and none of them were anything that was going to do anything for me really. And I basically, I called a friend of mine. I said, he's a headhunter, and he said, how about commercial real estate? I said, sure, what is it? He's like, go for an interview. So I had no idea of the industry. I had no idea anything about it. And it turns out that I was built for it, and I fell into it. I followed what I was told to do. I walked in and they said, do this. And I did it, and I did it well. And it took me about a year to figure it out. But then when I did, I've been doing it for 21 years. It feels, it's gone like that so quick. But, I think most people come into it only really 2 times in their life. You're either right out of university where you have no risk at all, and you're living at home with your parents, and that's a really good opportunity to get into the business because you can live on a lower income until you get going. The other part of it was which is what you did. For me, I came in my late 20s where I kind of said, you know what, I can see in the next 5 years, I'm not married, I don't have a girlfriend, but I will be married with a girlfriend and want a career one day. I better get going. So it was the right career for me at the time. I was right timing, right place, and I definitely did well with it.
I guess the question for you is once you started not knowing, you said you started really not knowing what it was. How far into it, in terms of a length of time, were you before you really grasped onto that this is going to be your long-term career?
Yeah, I think it was, your first 3 months is in the career, and this is what we tell people also. whenever they come to Titan New York. Your first 3 months is a very interesting time. You're not doing any deals. You're not representing any clients. Your job is to get clients. And I think once you're over that sort of hump, you're more likely to make it to a year. So once I got to about 12 months and I saw myself doing a deal every month thereafter, so I was constantly doing transactions after that, then, and you can see how your revenue starts coming into your bank account. Probably about, for me, it was about 15, 16 months after I'd started. And then I could feel the industry, I got better at it, I was creative. So I probably about 12, 15 months into it, I kind of knew like this was it. I was in it. Like I was doing well. I'd cleared the hump. I'm in. And I made my own success from there. I think that's probably where I did. And I don't know for you, like you also, you were here for a number of years. And I can tell you that, you were very much part of the strategic direction of Titan New York in determining where we are today. But you didn't start that way. You know, there was other guys around you at the time. When did you know it was for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, truthfully for me, the first year and a bit were tough as you're explaining as well. I think, what really immersed me into not only the industry, but the company itself was that we were a small company growing and there was an opportunity to help take some say in the direction that we went. And so of course, I started doing the deals and getting comfortable. Like you, I would say, I would agree with about 15, 16.
Oh, we lost you again. Anthony, we lost you. That's okay. We'll get you back. Okay. So here's what we'll do. I can tell you that I share Anthony's feeling that it was about 15, 16 months into it. But there's some definite barriers, and I can see why, getting into this industry has its challenges. And we talked a bit about it. So age was one we just talked about. So it's either like really, right out of university, somewhere in your late 20s. But, it takes a little, if you were going to learn a new trade, it's really a step back if you're in your mid to late 30s, because you're going to have to hold back on some income for a couple of years to get going. Whereas you tend to see younger people getting into it, but as your career progresses, you really do become more powerful the longer you're in the business, and that is only because you get knowledge, experience, contacts. It becomes easier to do things. So age is one of those barriers, and again, time to become knowledgeable like that. You just need that time to get into it. There's licensing, and that's always that takes a while. You got to be licensed to do this. It's the same license as a residential license as a corporate, but if you ask a corporate advisor how similar they are to residential, you'll hear a lot of pushback. There's also a long sales cycle. So if I get a client today, you're not going to see if I call someone today, say, call me back in 3 months. Then you call them back in 3 months, say, call me back in 3 months. So it takes you 6 months to get the meeting, a month to get it. And hi, Anthony, you're back.
I'm back.
All right.
Sorry about that.
All right. I think I'm in here too. You'll see a long sales cycle. So it can take you, by the time you call someone, it could take you 12 to 18 months to get paid on that phone call. So it takes a while to get the commissions going, but once you start doing it, there's always commissions being collected. It's a closed network. I mean, Anthony, I think you'd agree that, the getting into the business is there are only so many brokers in it. You'll ask any broker, there's too many brokers in it, but it really is you can select, maybe 10 companies that are actually in this business. And you can identify exactly how many brokers are doing corporate, commercial, or retail, or industrial, or investment. So it's one of those, you got to kind of know someone to get into the business a bit. I think that's kind of one of those things.
I'm just going to interject there quickly. I mean, it's a big difference between residential real estate and commercial. Residential, the product that comes on is only on for so long, a month, and then it's a new house with a new agent, these sort of things. But within the commercial industry, it's the same faces you see all around. The landlords remain the same for the most part. Their selected listing representatives remain the same for the most part. And so developing those relationships is really the fundamental aspect of the business. Being able to pick up the phone and get hold of someone and get the answer you're looking for is crucial. And it's hard to do that without pre-existing relationships.
I agree. And there's a risk aversion. I mean, this is a commission-based business. So if you're going to choose to do this, you're going to do this with a sense of like, hey, look, I can fall. I can have a bad year. And, if you're not going to be able to accept that risk, then it's hard to get into the business. There's ways to dip your feet into it. You start off in research, and then you're on a once you're licensed, you get a draw, and then from there you move on from there. But you need to get over that risk too. So that's one of the reasons why they do that. And we talked about when do most people get into the real estate business. For Anthony, he started right out of high school. I started in my late 20s.
University.
Sorry.
Well, that's okay. But I will sort of reiterate that risk, and that has to do with age as well. You might have covered this while I was getting my computer up and started again. But your ability to take on that risk, especially in the first year, 2 years, when you're really getting it going, it's comparable to your education level for or investment in as like a lawyer or doctor. Obviously not 7 years. But those first couple of years are tough, and you have to be in the right place to survive that. And obviously the age, like you said, I started right out of university, still eating ramen noodles for the past 4 years. Okay with that moving forward, so that allowed me to get into it. But certainly as life goes on, you pick up bigger expenses. It is a harder industry to transition to. So you don't really get those sort of 35 to 45-year-olds transitioning into the industry. At that point, people who are in it have been in it for 10, 15 years kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you think your first year looks like?
I mean, the opportunity to get into commercial real estate is very much starting your own business. And as any entrepreneur will tell you, generally the number one step in starting a business is pick up the phone and start dialing and start the conversations flowing. And really, your first year, I mean, I think throughout your career, there's different milestones that come up. And of course, we're talking first, second, and third year milestones. But really, in your first year, there's multiple milestones within that. And your first 3 months, all you're doing is making dials, trying to connect with tenants, trying to get as many meetings, really building that funnel and building your network. And I think that's one of the challenges entering into the business is that, when you're coming out of school, you don't have a Rolodex of business contacts. You don't have all this pre-existing network. And so, your first 3 to 6 months, you're really building that network for benefit down the road. So, the first milestone is that third month, probably. If you can survive that third month and have a good book of business or funnel in place at that time, the hopes that'll carry you to the end of that first year. So the first 3 months, you're really, a glorified cold caller, for lack of better expression, until you can get the clients. And that's when you move on to doing something, more exciting, which is, the conversations, the deal steps and all that kind of thing.
So, I always have this conversation with new agents, and I say to them, look, you don't have anything to do except go get clients in your first 3 months. As your career, what you do now in your first 3 months, you will not be doing this like this going into the rest of your career. Where when you first start, the first week is absolutely fascinating and fun. But after so many dials and building walks, you can definitely see a plateauing. And my comment is don't plateau, because once you start getting clients and once you start working on your deals, your ability to pick up the phone and prospect drops dramatically. And what you always want to avoid is sort of that, what do you say, Anthony? Roller coaster?
Emotional roller coaster or financial roller coaster in this.
Financial roller coaster. You don't want to be like, oh my God, it's a great year and I've done all my deals and then I have no deals. And you want to keep that prospecting going, but you really have this opportunity at the very beginning to just put everything you can into your prospecting so that it just sort of carries you through. And And that's a really important time, those first 3 months. And then you start working on it on deals, and you know, all of a sudden you're touring, and you're papering offers, and your ability to pick up the phone really drops off. And then
time management becomes that much more crucial as you're sort of exiting that first 3 months. The balancing of all the different tasks to be done is really what will make or break a new agent, I think.
Yeah, and then you can see that by the time they get to the second year, you know, if you sort of made it past that year, you can see people really getting the confidence. They've seen a couple of deals close, they've closed a deal or so they have the ability to do the job. And you know, it is a completely, you learn. I'm still learning every day. Like, there's something really new. It's an engaging job. But you know, the basics of it, you kind of got it. And in the second year, you kind of take it forward, I think. And then I think, you know, by the third year, Anthony, like, you're kind of there, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think the third year is where you really start to see the benefit of previous work. You know, you've put tenants in place, really starting your second year. You know, you start to get referrals a little bit more. You've closed enough deals to be confident and in your abilities, and that comes off in front of the clients as well. And your ability to speak to the market. And
oh, I lost him again. All right. We keep moving here. I think what he's saying is that the next year's okay. So we're going to keep moving. On your third year, you do really get that rhythm. I think by your fifth year, you feel really strong. Like you're an expert in what you're doing, and you've seen most of it, and you carry forward. And you know, there's two ways to look at the key traits to a successful broker. So the first one is from a client's perspective. So from a client's perspective, we did this survey to our clients, and also when we pitched certain clients, potential clients, and we didn't get them, we went back to them and we asked them a number of questions. And what we came out of it, and it was not really in any order, but experience, knowledge, and trust. And from the experience side, you can only get that with time. And on the knowledge side, you could only get that with time, right? Like the experience gave you knowledge, and the knowledge helped you get more experience, and the two feed each other. But trust is an interesting thing, because trust is what a client gives you by how they view you. So, for example, if I walk in with a suit on and a tie, the client's going to look at you and say, "Okay, you're wearing a suit and tie." And that's one of those conversations that Anthony and I have. He says he disagrees, but it's also, it's perception, and you have to walk in and be able to give that to the client, and that's how we've seen them sort of stack how they look at us. But there is a different level of a perspective that makes a good agent from the broker side, like what we've seen and what we know internally inside of an agent that's made them really great. And there's of course a lot more to it. So the first one, from our perspective, like what we're looking for when we're hiring an agent, the first one is persistence. So I wish Anthony was back here. He's been popping in and out because of his connection, and I'm sorry about that. But for me, persistence has really been one of my key factors in my success. And I'll tell you, my father, when I was younger, he gave me this plaque, and the plaque had I'll read it to you. It says, "Press on. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful people with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education alone will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent." Well, I mean, the idea is that and then here's the plaque if you want to see it. The idea is that there's just so many barriers that are put in front of you in any given day. Like, there's a reason why we're in commercial real estate, because it's not the easiest thing in the world. You have to push through, and you have to represent, and And that's probably, the very first step in this process is you got to stay the course. I think even both in your representation of your clients and also in your career. Anthony's back. So
I am back. Sorry, I'm having some computer issues. Switched over to the phone, so it should be good.
okay. I think another one that's really carried me, and one of the things that have why clients should be hiring me is your honesty and reputation. And it's not like, oh, trust me, I'm honest. That's not it. What it is that when you're in negotiating with somebody else on the other side, what you say you're going to do, you do. And whatever you tell someone you're going to deliver on, you deliver on. And that way you've built this trust of honesty. And I have it with other brokers too. When an agent says to me, hey, Aaron, it's Jim from Colliers. We've done 100 deals together. I think we can do this. That's an important, I'm going to believe him. And I'm going to take my client, because they're going to believe me, down a road to get to the end because I've listened, because I know what this guy has said to me. I think that's a very important part of reputation. It's a value that when you hire your broker and they're out there representing you, that they have the ability to reach out, get the information from someone else in the marketplace, and help you get that deal done.
I think there's a couple other things to note that sort of tie in with honesty, is also being genuine. There's to develop that trust and likability, you have to be who you are, and you can't be always worried about saying the exact right thing. It's about being yourself and providing the value. And there's so many times where clients will ask questions and put you on the spot, sort of, and say, hey, do you know the rate for this or the vacancy rate in this area? And if you don't know that answer, honestly, it's sometimes more valuable to say, I want to get you those true figures. I'll get it to you by 2 p.m. today, and then deliver by 2 p.m. So it's not always about knowing every single piece of information, but getting it in a timely fashion and doing it in a genuine way, and showing your true personality sort of ties into that reputation piece.
Yeah, it's hard to train. It's one of those things that you really are. Like, you're either that guy or that woman, or you're not. And I think that's I think that's really what we kind of strive to look for in the agents that we're trying to hire. The other one is the focus on the client, not the commission. I mean, Anthony, you and I have both been in this situation together and separately where we can push a deal in a specific way that benefits our commission and not the client. Every agent broker at some point in their career will be in that position. And if you representing the commission, you're representing the deal and not the client, you're not going to make money in your life. Like, I think it's one of the keys to, the success that I've had is that my clients are generational, that they're really with me for many, many, many years.
Yeah, I think to be successful in the industry, you need to have those clients that stay with you for your career. And, we are put in a position where we're trusted. We're trusted part of that organization. And if we say, yeah, just sign the deal, it's a good one, do it, and we're only representing the commission, it doesn't take long for that to be evident. And that client will, that level of trust will be broken, and your career will be short-lived. So making sure, even if it means taking a hit on your financial income for that one deal, setting it up for a long-standing relationship throughout the years. And again, talking about being the in-house real estate department, you want to be aligned with that company and grow with them. And that's certainly one of our desires. So, as soon as you start representing the commission, you're jeopardizing your trust, your integrity, all of those things. And that doesn't stay hidden for long. So you're right. There's no short-term play here. It really is for the long term.
And going on to the next one, I mean, this is real estate. There's a reason why they call it real estate, because, things go wrong all the time. It doesn't matter how much you prep or plan or choose. If things are going bad, they go bad. And then when things go good, they can go amazing. So there's that, emotional roller coaster we were talking about before. And, a really even sort of Keel attitude where, you know, no good days, no bad days. That's sort of been my mantra. And I know you've pointed out a couple of things that are wrong with that mantra. And I agree with you. So maybe you want to,
yeah, I mean, I don't think there's something wrong with it. I think it's just a different viewpoint, but the same and you know, ideal. And that is that, you know, there are going to be bad days and there are going to be good days, and there are going to be days that, you know, deals fall apart for one reason or another, and you go home and you feel it. You know, you lose sleep over it when this happens. But your ability to sort of absorb that, either celebrate the victories or ponder on the failures, but come in the next morning, you know, guns blazing, is really what's going to differentiate those. If you stay stuck in either too high or too low of a space, it really affects your ability to represent the client and produce for yourself. So I believe that there are good days and there are bad days. But I think what we're trying to say is really the same, that having an even keel throughout the process is essential.
Yeah, it goes back to the persistence one at the beginning, right? You keep going, good or bad. But again, yeah, I mean, I should celebrate my wins a bit more. And you know, usually it's like, okay, next, let's keep going. Yeah. So
you kind of have to, because, you know, once the deal's closed, you wake up the next day, you know, the business has to continue. So, you know, you can only celebrate or dwell on a result for so long before you just get back to it and nose to the grindstone kind of thing.
And I can tell you, the one way out of a bad day is the next one, which is creativity. So it's been my tool from the very beginning, and it's a very hard tool to first use, because I think you'd said it earlier, that it's hard to be creative when you first start.
Yeah, I was saying that the creativity is something that is probably my biggest takeaway from working with you, or at least one of them anyway. You know, when you're starting out and you're just trying to do your best, you tend to have your eye on the prize and see it in a straight line. And sometimes that straight line has some roadblocks in it. And creativity is your ability to sort of take a side path around. The end goal is always the same, but the way you get there doesn't have to be in that straight arrow line. And your creativity allows you to, you know, sort of align the goals of everyone. I mean, at the end of the day, the best part about this industry is that, you know, we're not trying to sell a product that people either already have or don't really need. At the end of the day, everybody who's at the table, being the landlord, the listing agent, ourselves, and our clients being the tenants, everyone's end goal is about the same. Everybody wants to either lease space or lease their space. And so, you know, because that end goal or that end target is the same amongst all the sort of stakeholders, there is always this fluidity of being able to sort of take new paths and you know, do things a little bit unconventionally, or come up with out of the box ideas. And it's very hard to see that when you're starting, because you're just like, okay, what's the right way to do this? How do I do that? And you tend to neglect the ability to be creative and come up with solutions that are not normal. So
yeah,
you know, I picked it up from you, and I still learn it from you all the time. So it's a huge part of the business for sure.
Yeah, you're as you get into the business, you learn all the different tools at your disposal. And you know, how in front of my office, there's a sign that says, "Figure it out how to figure it out," right? Because, you know, being creative and figuring out a solution is really the first step in any brokerage. That's what people are actually hiring space in your brain for you to figure things out for them. So I think that's part of it. And again, that goes to this natural curiosity. Like, we have to know so much about so many things to do our job. You know, and one of the things that we've learned is we've learned the whole market. I mean, if you're in it long enough, you've seen every building. The supply is very static in terms of buildings. Buildings just don't come up, you know, pop out of the ground. They take years, so you can see the supply change. But you know, that's easy to get your handle around. But things like design and construction and dealing with the city for permits and managing personalities, and so to learn everything there is to know is really hard. But you got to be naturally curious. Like, how does that work? What's over there? What's around that corner? I think that's really.
Yeah, you have to ask the questions, lift every rock, and you know, I think if you're not asking questions or watching other people that are in the industry, you know, do their thing, it would be hard to come up with your own identity. And so having that desire to find out more, to become more intertwined with an organization or understand the landlord's perspective. We're always representing the tenant side, so sometimes it's hard to say, okay, well, how does we know how we see it, how does the landlord see it? And you have to have that natural curiosity to say, okay, let's rip that apart, break it down, see what everyone's end goals are here and how they're viewing the situation. And I think unless you're probing, asking questions, and that's why it's so important to have a good senior team or a mentor or someone in the industry. They don't have to be in the same brokerage, but someone that you can ask those questions to, because if you're walking around with those horse blinders on, you don't get to be creative. You don't see things in different levels. And I think that curiosity and the ability to ask those questions is important.
Yeah, in service delivery, you and I have to like sort of break it out. There's corporate service delivery, then there's personal service delivery. So, why don't you'll talk about the corporate, I'll talk about this personal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been one of our sort of mantras from the start when we said, okay, we're going to take Titan York in this direction, was that, with so many agents doing deals at the same time, it was important for us to have a streamlining of that service delivery in the sense that, if you were to hire an agent that's been at the company for a year or 10 years, or whether you're representing a client that's 1,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet, that our step-by-step process is the same. So, every client can expect to have that same delivery of service, no matter who you're working with from the organization. I think there would be an opportunity at a lot of brokerages or a lot of other, businesses for people to sort of go off on a tangent and be a bit of a rogue agent or rogue employee and say, okay, I know how to do this. This is how I'm doing it. This is my new thing. I'm going to, reinvent the wheel to this, to an extent. And I think it's important. And I think that's one of our core focuses is to keep that process the same, no matter who you're working with, whether, large, small, new, old, whatever it is. I think knowing what to expect, this is one of the biggest expenses that a company bears, behind employee wages, and knowing what's coming next is, puts a certain level of peace of mind, and allows them to think clearly as opposed to not, being consumed with the unknown. So I think it's crucial to be able to know what's coming up next. And I think that does.
Yeah. And from people forget that this is we're not selling a product. There's no actual real estate we represent. We are a service provider. We broker between a tenant and a landlord, or a buyer and a seller. We don't own the real estate. We're not selling that product. We're selling a service to the tenant. And one of the things that I got out of when I went back and did a BCom at Ryerson, I took service excellence, and that was the one course I took with me everywhere I went. And service excellence was about, if you walk into a hotel and you sit down and you order a cup of coffee, it's not just the coffee that's coming, it's the guy pouring or the person pouring the coffee at the same time, as part of that experience. So that's the same thing, for us, that we want to deliver, I want to make sure that that agent is delivering that personal service. So when the cell phone goes off, that you pick it up and you answer it. If you can't, then you respond within a timely fashion. That if you say you're going to do something, you do it by that period of time. And your clients aren't wondering about you. They know that you're working and trust you. And that once you deliver that level of service and your clients get used to that level of service, they're definitely going to want to use you over and over again. And I think that's the personal side of the service that we're looking for when we're dealing with other when we're looking at agents. The other one that is a challenge that people don't quite get. There's a sense of pride. The next two of them are sort of together, but this job is about managing the personalities in front of you. That you're and Anthony, you can attest to it. I mean, you're in the middle of a deal right now. Like, how many people are you dealing with, and what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously there's the landlord entity, but they're being represented by a brokerage.
Well, that's two.
The brokerage actually has a team on it, so there's 3 different agents on there.
Let's four personalities. Okay.
Yeah, so an email goes back to one, it gets responded by another one. And then, of course, we have our internal team, and then your clients. And your clients, our first contact is generally president, CEO, CFO, but they will also generally assemble a team part of that decision making. So you might have a junior, an office manager, maybe another senior decision maker. And so, we're closing in on almost 10 people that are involved in this process and conveying the message across all these stakeholders efficiently and making sure the message is the same message being passed on is a huge challenge. And I think, starting out, that was probably one of the most stressful parts of a deal, was that there's so many people having input. And if you don't, take control for yourself and help, manage those personalities and the information exchange, things can get out of hand pretty quickly. And it really can have some negative effects, not only on the deal, but also on your psyche as well. So it's crucial to sort of take charge, help convey all the message that you can. I mean, some things are out of your control, but to convey, whatever you can in the most efficient, streamlined way against, across all the stakeholders is challenging, but crucial.
Yeah. And part of that is that, you have a sense of pride. I mean, I look at myself, I've been working at this for many years. I've done well. I've got, I feel accomplished. And then I pick up the phone, and on the other side of the phone is this horrible agent and representing a great landlord, and I have a great tenant. I have to ensure that if, that listing agent on the other side, that doesn't impede, the deal for my client. I represent my client's interests. So I've got to you got to put your pride aside. And sometimes you have a bad client, like, you don't want them, but you've had them. And again, you want to make sure that if you've chosen to represent this client, then you're doing it. And you got to put away your side. You're a broker. You've got to broker those relationships. I think that's a very strong skill set, that if you can actually handle the people in front of you, recognize who they are, and be able to work with them, then that is a very, very powerful personality trait to bring to the table as a successful agent.
Yeah, I think, sometimes, we often say, part of the benefits of a tenant rep brokerage is that you get to keep your landlord in an arm's length. So many times I've had the conversation with a client say, no, I've been friends with my landlord, I've been here for 25 years. He's a buddy of mine. And when you're in lease negotiation, if it's going the way it's supposed to, there are going to be punches thrown. Everyone's trying to gain that extra inch here and there. And that can really disrupt the relationship between the landlord and the tenant. And so, when you're brokering a deal and managing these people, sometimes you're the one that gets to take that punch. And generally it should be us. And whether it was your fault or your vision or not, sometimes you have to take those blows to protect your tenant. And sometimes you have to be the bad guy, even if you don't believe in it. But, when you're representing the client, you're that sort of buffer zone between, the two punchers. And I think that's the pride aspect as well. That's, sometimes you just got to suck it up and keep pushing the thing forward.
Yeah. The one thing I can tell you is that I have been lucky. As I moved through the business, I have really found myself with some amazing deals. So let me define what luck I've had. One, I got to work with you for 12 years. I've really, that's good luck. And all the other agents at Titan York have been able to choose the people I get to work with. And I think that's really been lucky. In terms of career, we've walked into some amazing deals, just some brilliant spaces and stuff you could be really proud of. And quite often it was just because I was out there pounding the pavement and I picked up and dialed the right person at the right time, or was talking to the right person at the right time, or I did the right deal and then they referred me to another one. So there's a huge level of synergy and luck that comes with activity. And so if you go back to that persistence and activity, and you're going to get lucky, you're going to get a big deal, you're going to somewhere, it's going to come for you. It always does. And I think that's one of the magics about this business, I think.
Yeah, I mean, deals and clients come out of the woodwork sometimes. You never know. And I think that's one of the challenges getting into the industry as well, is, that phone call when you're trying to get hold of a decision maker is really dependent on when their lease is expiring. If they're signed a 5 or 10-year lease, 90% of that period, we're not dealing with that now. We're not dealing with it now. So to be present at the right time is really challenging. And truthfully, some of them, when it is, you have information on when their lease is expiring. But really, it's about being in front of people and telling people what you do. I'll tell you a quick story. I was at a bar one time waiting for a friend for some food and stuff, and was sitting at the bar. I'm the guy who always starts the conversation with the guy next to you. So chatting, asked me what I do, commercial real estate, this, that, and the other. This conversation came to an end. He left. Across the bar, a guy overheard our conversation, came over, gave me his card, and 2 weeks later, he was signed up, and we're out looking for space. And so, just telling people what you do. There's a big difference between, everyone knows a residential agent. There's just so many of them. But for commercial agents, it really is sort of a niche market, and not everyone knows a commercial agent. And so being present and presenting value outside of just, the cold call is hugely important. And I think, one of my favorite things about this industry is it really doesn't have much to do with real estate. It's that you become a connector of people. You're working with an accountant one day, and then you're working with a company that's struggling with their finances. You connect the dot, or a web designer with a growing company that needs a new website. And you end up connecting these dots for all these people, and providing value beyond what we normally do. But, that keeps you in front of people, keeps you relevant, keeps allowing you to provide value. And really, if you're not doing that, it's hard to just pick up the phone and get it right on the first time.
You're right. It shouldn't be on the list that they're a connector. I think that is someone who knows everybody is absolutely one of those people that's one of those key personality traits that allows you to really grow in the business. It allows you to get referrals, and it allows you to, put other people together over time. And I think you're absolutely right. The word connector should be up here as one of the key successful traits of a real estate agent. Okay. There's perks though. Like there's perks to this business. So some things that people really don't talk about. And I think one of them is that you're working your hours of work are business hours. Your clients are corporate commercial, and they work from 8:30 to 6 or 9 to 5 and regular work hours. So, and they don't really want to necessarily talk to you when they go home. So your ability to connect with them is just during work hours. So you have your nights off, and they're not working on weekends. So you have your weekends off. I'm not to say that there are not days that you don't work late. Of course, there's days you work late, and there are weekends that you will work. I got to get this done. I got a big deal on the go. I got to get prepared. Yeah, you might work a weekend, but that's not every weekend. That's in between. So and especially as your career goes on, you can really get that time off. Now, I find that going on a vacation, the business doesn't stop. So if you're going on a vacation, you better go somewhere where your cell phone works, because during the day you're going to be doing some work. You'll be taking calls. I find that's one of the things.
I've always maintained the best way to close a deal is go on vacation. That's when all the flurry of activity seems to happen.
Crazy. Is that crazy? I never understood that. Let's go on a vacation. It gets done. But Christmas time's the best, because at Christmas, your clients don't want to talk to you. They're off for those 2 weeks. And so you really do get 2 weeks down at Christmas where nobody wants to talk to you. But other than that, it's generally going all the time. So you can get this life-work balance. There's that strong, you can be home for dinner with your family. You can be home for breakfast. You can be there on the weekends. You can be there for hockey. So it's not like a residential agent where, every minute of every day there's something that's going to happen, and you're constantly running. There's no difference between a weekday and a weekend.
And there's no nights or weekends. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no nights. So
that's when you're on. So it's that balance is being one of the things that have kept me at the table. And in the industry is
you know, I love the industry. I love what we work, what we do. But I also love, you know, to join sports leagues or to go to the cottage on the weekend and to say, hey guys, you know, we're going up to the cottage, come up with us in 2 weekends from now, and be there, you know, without knowing is really powerful for enjoying your time off, which is crucial. So you know, that life work balance is a huge part of it.
You know, the income too. I mean, there's a really good opportunity to make a phenomenal income. It's a very standardized commission process for the most part in the office world. On the retail world, you're very specialized. Industrials, you know, again, it's standardized, even on the buy-sell side. So you have this, you know, you can go to a very high-paid lawyer level and more, depending on where you are and where you stack up in terms of on the industry. There are agents that are doing a couple million a year. There are agents that are doing $80,000 a year, and you know, you really depends on where you land up on that peg. But it is you know, there's a good opportunity it's your own business, and you have to drive it, and you know, you put your head down, and you'll get there. So Anthony and I went to New Orleans in December.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think we did a Vegas year before. I was in Vegas also for another thing, and then we were in Boston, and we went to Chicago. We've been to Montreal. So you get these opportunities to travel with the business. There's some incentive trips that are part of it, and you know, you can really get around and see stuff. And then there's always these lunches and events that are put on by landlords to attract the agents to the spaces so they can see them, and they give away prizes, and you know, your chances of winning are pretty good, but you know, you win more in your life, kind of thing.
I've only won one of those prizes.
You never won?
But it was Leaf tickets though. So
you won Leaf tickets. Oh, right.
Yeah. No, it's and you know, that's a really fun aspect, especially when you're starting out. You know, it's a slow roll when you get started. You know, we talked about some of the barriers of entry, and it can be a tough.
Yeah. Anthony got lost again. Oh, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
There you go. Yeah.
And I was saying that, you know, these receptions and you know, not only they're a lot of fun, but it also gives you an amazing opportunity to start to build those relationships with the other brokers and landlords. And so if you're not attending those, you're not shaking hands, you're not making memorable impressions, you're losing out on an opportunity. So not only is it fun, but there's you know, a huge work aspect related to it as well.
You know, it's funny. One of the perks that aren't in here, and you just sort of brought it up, is that as you end up working with all these different brokers, these listing brokers around the city, you know, these listing brokers are your partners in a deal. They're not, you know, you're going to do 100 deals with these guys, and you know, over your lifetime, in each one of them, and you know, you've got blood. You've beaten each other up. You've worked together. You know each other. You really get to know that person. So these events, you kind of like, you know, you're like, hey, how's it going? And you're talking, and it, you know, there's a camaraderie with your competitors, and it's a very weird industry. Like we're all competing against each other for the clients, but at the same time, we're also working together because that guy might be listing a building that you're trying to do a deal in. So, you know, that trust, that knowledge, that understanding, that's kind of what you're hiring. If you're a tenant and you're hiring a broker, you're hiring that ability to reach out and grab these other brokers and be able to talk to them. So that those lunches and events really bring you together, especially on Christmas. And I remember starting in the business, and this is amazing, free food, free liquor. This is fun. Now I'm like, oh, I don't want to go. But you know, so many years later, you're like, okay, another one. But when you start off, it's a really great thing for landlords to do for these agents, to get them out there and knowing them. And you know, Anthony, you add the bottom one, so you know, go ahead. Like, I agree with you, and you should talk to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it boils down to is you know, when you're looking to start in the industry, you pick a brokerage and you go, and the brokerage carries a name, regardless what everyone thinks. And within the industry, there's a connotation with that name, and it'll get you indoors. But at the end of the day, when people hire you, they're hiring you as a person. The brokerage becomes sort of a secondary feature And because of that, you're starting your own business essentially. So your ability to be creative in the way that you market yourself, and the way that you do a deal, and put yourself out there, is open to interpretation and open to your desires. So, if someone believes that, attacking or building up a social media presence is important, then go for that. If you think it's more traditional in terms of email and phone calling, then great, do that. And you sort of have this ability to invent who you are and who you want to be in that industry, as long as it's genuine and authentic. There's a good chance for success. So it really allows you to, and again, you're talking about that sort of life-work balance where, let's say you're working, all of a sudden your kid has a recital or something at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You can, work around a schedule for the most part to be available for those moments, and that creativity to sort of build your day or build your career week, month, year long, is really powerful. And again, another real asset to the industry. You're not just sitting at your desk doing the same thing every day, and nor is it out of your control what you do. You're very much in the driver's seat, so you can, become who you want to be in the industry.
There's one on here that I think we should talk about. We didn't put on here, but it's exposure to other industries. So exposure, because we're representing companies, we're seeing these law firms and warehousing. So it's amazing to see how that is to see those different organizations and really the full spectrum of the market, in retail, industrial, investment, real estate. Like we're just really have this huge exposure to everything. So it's
one of the best parts is, you become intertwined with an industry that you had no previous exposure to. And we talked about being a connector. That's one aspect to it, but there's also that curiosity to know, how does this company function, and how could they better utilize either their space or whatever it is. And you get to really know all these different industries from the inside out. And it gives you just that sort of mass knowledge and ability to communicate to different industries. And it's a really fun part of it.
We sort of talked about this a little bit, and I don't think we have to go too far into it. The problem, I can tell you this: if you ever compare a commercial agent to a residential agent, the commercial corporate agent gets his back up and says, "We're nothing like them. We have the same license, but they don't know how to do what we're doing." In fact, the other side of that is we don't really know how to do residential real estate. So if I was buying a house, I could probably buy a house, but if I was selling a house, when I did buy my house, my first house, we lost 5 houses because I was representing myself. And my mother-in-law was like, "Well, why don't you get a real estate agent to help you?" And I'm like, "I am a real estate agent," but eventually bought a house. But really, I've done maybe 3 residential deals in my life, 1 for me, 2 for me, 1 for my sister. And I've done 1 for a client too. But if I was going to sell a house, I would of course get a residential agent to help me.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we're looking at it from a career perspective, the biggest differences are your time where you're working. Again, we're corporate, nights and weekends are off, whereas it's the opposite for residential. I think that in residential, we talked about that the availability is sort of being replenished all the time. So, you might do a deal with the same agent, a couple times here and there, but generally it's a new agent listing a new product from a new seller. Whereas in commercial, it's all the same people. So developing those relationships is a big difference. You could be a rogue one-off agent.
And for decades, I mean, there are agents that are like in their 70s that, you've been dealing with when they were in their 50s. Like, it's just, these guys are just around forever too.
Yeah. So it's a bit different, obviously. And of course, the decision-making process from the client's perspective is different. It's the emotions are removed from a commercial transaction. You don't like the carpet, cool, that can be replaced. Whereas if, you're dealing with a mom with 3 kids trying to find the perfect house, emotionally driven decisions are huge. So, taking that out is another big aspect. It all comes down to dollars and cents. Does the deal make sense from a commercial perspective? Yes, great. And removing those emotions helps keep keep the water clear as opposed to murky.
There is, I mean, look, the one benefit that we know in residential versus commercial is that when you do a deal, the close cycle's a lot quicker. So by the time you actually, go in, finish a deal off, so you're going to go present an offer, 3 days, 4 days for to do an inspection, and then the deal closes a month and a half, 2 months later. That's a very quick turnaround. Mm-hmm. In commercial, it's quite a bit longer. You're representing someone probably 12 to 18 months prior to the expiry of their lease term, and you won't get paid until the start of their next lease term. So you can be 12 to 18 months working with the client before you see revenue from that. And the revenue is larger at times, but it is definitely a longer sales cycle.
Yeah, I get a lot of candidates in interviews asking, is it possible to do this part-time? Because in residential it is. You could do it on the side and close 1 or 2 houses, or you can do that without investing your entire life, and you could make a living, not doing it full time. But for commercial, you have to be present in every day, nose to the grindstone. And if you're not talking to clients, you're talking to brokers or landlords and this sort of thing. So it's not something you come in and it really becomes a career decision. People will get into residential real estate for a few months, make some money. Okay, now I'm going to go do this thing. For commercial, you have to live, eat, breathe it on a daily basis, and it becomes your career for your lifespan. So it's not a sort of in and out industry.
Yeah, and not just that, but you don't, there are 1 or 2, but very few and far between, where you can see a residential real estate agent make the jump to commercial, because it's a different mindset. It's it's a different way of looking at the world. We're dealing with corporations and not with the emotional purchases, and there's less hand-holding and more of we're making decisions but based on real numbers, right? So I think that's there. You can see that difference. It's like a heart surgeon and a knee surgeon, like they're 2 very different doctors, and they're not intertwined, right? Look, I think the key takeaway from me on this is that this has been an amazing career for me. I've really done well. I've been able to afford my lifestyle. I'm not like wealthiest guy in the world, but it's been a great level where we've been able to accomplish the things I need to accomplish, and I've really enjoyed it. So every day I get up in the morning and I'm out of bed and I'm running, and I know that's and it's kind of how I'm built. But I'm running and I'm enjoying it. And if I was bored and I wasn't engaged in it, then I know myself I would be doing something else. But I'm not. It's been a great industry for me. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's given me the ability to have a job that I love, but also do the things I love outside of work. And I think when you talk about these key traits and what makes you successful, in times that I'm battling or in situations where I have to do something that I don't really want to, or am sometimes considering compromising in terms of how deep do you go into it. I keep reminding myself, like, if I was in that position, like what agent would I want representing me? And I do my self check, like, is this who I would want to be representing myself? And so, if you were going to go buy a house or, sign a lease, it's important to represent the clients the way that you would want that agent to represent you. And I think it's sometimes important to check yourself like that. And I do it, once a week, maybe once a month, and say, am I being who I would want to represent me in that industry? And, we labeled all those traits. And I would hope that if you're being the person that you would want representing you, that you're meeting, you're checking all those boxes off as well. So it's important to be genuine and be who you are, but also be who you would expect someone in your shoes to be. And keeping at it is the hardest part. So yeah, I don't know. I'm on my mobile here, so I can't really see questions. Do you have any in there, Aaron? And if there are questions after this, of course, you can email either info@titanyork.com, or if you're interested in having a conversation about what a career looks like, you can always feel free to email me. I'm always happy to connect and have a chat. Clifford@titanyork.com. happy to have a conversation or get you in. And yeah, thanks for joining today.
Yeah, one question is how, like, what, and it came in from, I'm gonna paraphrase it because it was a friend of mine saying, in terms of the sales cycle, how many dials and contacts do you kind of have to make in the beginning of your career, like a day or a week, in order to really, to get hold of those clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, we've sort of worked out our own metrics. And so many dials you receive a no from because of that timing that we talked about. 90% of phone calls, there's just not a need at that time unless you're within that 18 to 12 months away. So we have our own metrics, and it's not as high as some other sales industries. Some industries you talk to, they're making 100, 150 calls a day. Ours are a lot more targeted. We want to make sure that we're making those calls from an educated background. So we're doing the background information on who the tenants, who's their landlord, what other buildings have they been in. And so there's a lot of prep work for these calls. So, it usually averages to about 20 to 30 calls a day kind of thing. You're shooting in and around the 120 to 150 mark a week, which when you talk to a lot of salespeople, they're like, I do that in a day. But again, it's a very different strategy when you're making those dials. And again, because those dials are not always either connecting or connecting at the right time, having that consistent throughout throughout your career really is crucial. What would you say?
Yeah, I think you just got to keep those dials every single day. Just set aside points in time and just say, I'm going to go out and prospect, and this is what I'm going to do. I think it's also important that the more to building walk and understand the buildings. I think if you understand the geography, having a sense of geography is also really good for you. So when you're calling a tenant in a specific building, you've been in that building, you've seen it, you felt it, you can talk to it. I think it's really important that so that you walk as many buildings as you can in your career so that you can actually know what you're talking about. Next question. Do you think you should be wearing a suit and a tie at all times in commercial real estate?
We've butt headed on this a couple times, and I think I'm going to take first crack at it, and then you can certainly jump in. Traditionally, the answer is yes. We're dealing with corporate clients, and a suit and tie is generally the attire that we're going for. However, I do believe, especially nowadays, it's important to dress to your client. And so if you're working with retailers or a young tech company, very often they don't want to be represented by a suit necessarily. So sometimes, you might dress down and you might just wear a button up and slacks or something, or whatever is appropriate for that client. But because we're generally, our brokerage anyways, is focusing on corporate office, you have to walk the walk and talk the talk. And part of that is looking sharp. It goes into that trust level. So the answer is, most of the time, I would say yes, the suit and tie is what we're shooting for. But again, there's always an argument to be said, and one that I agree with, that you should be dressing to the client.
So I go the opposite. I'm always from the perspective, and there's a reason, because I'm not as cool and good looking as Anthony. I just want to put it out there. For me, I'm a bit of a schlub when it comes to my clothes, and things don't fit me the way I always want them to. So wearing a suit and tie for me is a sense of a shield. So I automatically, internally, I'm like, okay, I gotta wear a suit and tie. But from the other perspective, as we deliver our services, we want to make sure that everyone sees us and it sees us in the right way to give us that trust. And when you tell someone that they've got to that they're going to spend $1 million based on your recommendation, I think wearing a suit and tie helps deliver that message. And that might just be all in my head, but I just feel like that's sort of where I say, no, wear a suit and tie, even if your client doesn't wear a suit and tie and they're a tech firm and they're wearing jeans and a t-shirt. I feel like they're also hiring that advice, and they're hiring that corporate advice, and you want to look corporate. But look, either way, we do great no matter what we wear. And I think that's pretty much, I think that's worked out well. Okay, what kind of training is provided at Titan York for someone who's new in this industry? So you want to take a first crack again?
Yeah, sure. Real estate is one of those industries that you can sit and talk about it all day long, but until you're doing it, you just can't learn. So, the training that we generally put in play, and we're constantly evolving it and changing the way that we do it. Your first week is really Real Estate 101. Let's get familiar with nodes of the city, particular clauses, what do buildings look like, what are the components of a lease document, all the
language as well.
Language, of course, yeah, absolutely. And so, trying to get that fundamental stuff out of the way in the first week is important to be able to sort of build yourself up. But there is a certain point where you have to just go out and do it. And the benefit at Titan York is we don't have teams. We are one giant team, if you will, and there's a very, very open door policy. So, when a new agent comes on, we do Real Estate 101 in the boardroom for the first week, and then they're off, trying to book meetings. And if they get a meeting, they bring an agent on, or another senior agent on, and they go through the process together to really understand the ropes. And it's not, one person doing all the glory work while the other one's pushing some paper around or doing research. It really is a team component where we're doing these actions together. And we talked about consistency of service delivery, and that's how it's learned. It's not learned by, hey, here's a piece of paper saying the steps. It's about witnessing, seeing people do it. I've been working with Aaron for 12 years and still learn something from him all the time. And I hope maybe he learns a thing or two once in a while from me as well. I don't know. But, learning from your peers is hugely important. And that's one of the things that we push out at Titan York is, we are boutique in size, but not in stature. And what we mean by that is, we're not a 100 or 200 person office. We're not international yet. But what we do offer is when you hire one agent or, maybe a pair of agents, that there's 15 other ones standing behind them. And we have internal meetings twice a week to discuss what's going on. And it really is the sort of team component that we help learn from each other. It is a very individualistic industry in the sense that you're responsible for your own income, but we really try hard to push that team component so that there's, we're able to lean on one another and learn from one another as well.
I think one of the things that you do get is you get this access to different styles right away from the senior agents who will show you where to go, how to do it, walk through each of the stuff until such time as you can run yourself. And you're going to team up all the way along. And then as you get bigger and better at what you do, you'll do smaller deals on your own, then you do bigger deals on your own. And then eventually at Titan York, you end up becoming senior and passing down all that information moving forward. And there's constantly training. So we meet every Monday morning at 8 o'clock. And then there's also a 9 o'clock sales meeting with Anthony on Wednesdays. Sorry, 8:30 meeting on Wednesdays. Sorry, Anthony. And again, it sets we go through each and everybody's deals. We go through everybody's clients each week. We go through everybody's prospects. We go through all the book meetings, and then and then on Wednesdays we talk about how to get the deals done. So there's a constant level of touching togetherness within Titan York, and that's how we bring up good brokers. Your greatest asset is experience, and having that experience around you with, pushing on yourself to make sure that you can answer those questions. I think that's very it's very one of our success factors for bringing up new agents.
Yeah, I'm going to add one more thing to that as well. Is we really tried to partner up with third-party companies. So whether it be a real estate lawyer, a space planner, or an accountant. And, we try to get these companies in from time to time to talk to our entire group about what it is they do in a real estate transaction, explain to them and give them tips about what they can pass on to their tenants as well. And of course, have that person's number on speed dial almost. And because they're friends of the brokerage, the younger agents are able to call these businesses and say, hey, I have a quick question and
you know, that's an appropriate thing to do. And so there's this access to knowledge beyond just what we do as a real estate perspective, but really when we said we wear all these hats and all these people that have to work with, being able to reach out with them directly and ask them questions on a daily basis is hugely powerful.
Yeah, there's a lot of lawyers that know that I'm calling. I'm like, hey, what do you think? There's no charge. It's like, okay, you should do this, and because that's part of it too. There's that, you know, between industries, there's also a movement of information, which is really important. So I think that's it. I appreciate the questions, and I hope everybody's doing well and staying safe. And if there's any more interest or any more questions regarding Titan York or what you think you need to be a better agent, then feel free to give us a call. And if you're a tenant watching this and you can get a better understanding of what it is that we real estate agents do for you and really what you're looking for when you're hiring us. And we hope have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye-bye.